Hi, I'm Jeff Clausen. Today I'm going to show you around the research brewery and talk about job opportunities working for both me and Tom Shellhammer up in the Brewing Science Lab. Alright, we're going to enter the pilot processing plant. This is a food processing facility, and I want to make sure you don't come in here unless you have permission and you're working with us. This is where the research brewery is housed. We're going to do a quick little walk around here. You get to see it in all of its glory. We are just getting ready for school to start, but we're finishing up some projects, so things are really messy right now. So let's go down to the other end, and I'm going to show you our mills. This is one of our mills. This is a hammer mill, and it is used to reduce malted barley or any other kind of cereal crop into a flour. And you can see some of the flour down below here. That's when we're going to use a mash filter, and that's this big blue thing. We use this like a big coffee press, and it basically removes the wort or sugar water after a mashing process. And we'll talk about that in a second here. This is our hop pelletizing mill that we just got. We've been processing hops. That's why it's so crazy out here. This basically creates a hop flour. So what you see in that tub there is hop material and some rice hulls that we use to clean it all out. Let's take a look inside so you can see what a hammer mill looks like on the inside. So the hops get deposited in this top hopper. They drop in past some magnets to catch any metal material that might be there, and are fed into this hammer mill. These are just flailing knives that spin around, and they pulverize the hop cones. The hop cones end up getting sucked down up through this cyclone, and then the materials drop down. That material in turn is taken and dropped into a hopper, where it has some rollers that move around and push it through a die, and we end up with hop pellets coming out down this side. We use liquid nitrogen to keep everything cool. So let's talk about the brewery a little bit. And this is our computer that interfaces with the brewery. So this is where we sit and work and run a brew. And it's a series of step sequences that make the brew happen. And what you see on the screens is represented up here in the actual brewery. So when we're making beer, we take malted barley, and it's run through a mill, and that's up on the upper deck up above. We put the malted barley into a hopper up there, and then when we're ready to start a brew, that malt goes through two sets of rollers, and it's reduced into what we call a grist. The grist drops down into either one of these two vessels on the right-hand side. Those are our mash tuns. So we mix the malted barley with water, and through the enzymes that naturally occur in the malt, we hold it at certain temperatures. Starches that are in there, long sugar chains, are reduced into simple sugars, which yeast can later assimilate and turn into ethanol and carbon dioxide. So that's the first part of the mashing process. From here, once we finish mashing, we'll transfer that mash through this pump down here over to a lauter tun, and this is where we do a physical separation of solids and liquids. So the solids are retained behind on top of this screen. The liquids are pulled off just using gravity. The rakes that you see inside help keep constant flow going through. In turn, if we don't use the mill upstairs and make a grist, we can make the fine powder using the hammer mill. And from the hammer mill into the mash filter, and the mash filter separates the wort into the kettle. This is our kettle. It's the fourth vessel over. The kettle is where we boil the wort, the sugar water that we extracted from the malt. And typically 60 to 90 minutes in here, this is where we add hops. Once we finish boiling, it's transferred over into the last vessel, the fifth vessel, which is the whirlpool, which we use to separate any solids that are in there, the hot material, denatured proteins, things like that. From there, the wort is pumped through a heat exchanger. Oxygen or air is pumped into the wort, and then the wort gets pumped up and over and out where this red hose is exiting. And then from there, it gets directed into one of our 20 fermentation tanks. The fermentation tanks have yeast added, and then the yeast will go through and produce carbon dioxide and ethanol. And we monitor those fermentations, and we look for color, alcohol levels, carbon dioxide levels, various other assays that we do in the finished beer. Once fermentation's complete, we cool them down, and we'll either filter or centrifuge the beer to clarify it, and from there into kegs or into bottles or cans. This is the old brewery that we've had since 1995. Hundreds of students have learned how to brew on this system. It's very manual, but you still learn the process of making beer. So juxtapose this brewery with our new fully automated modern brewery. And when you get into the brewing science upper division courses, we spend time brewing on both breweries, so you can still learn the process on the manual one and then learn how to program and create a beer on the fully automated system. So one of the other areas you can work is in the brewing science lab. We have undergraduates working right now doing some analysis, and they are analyzing hops. All right, now that you've had a chance to see the facilities, let's talk about job opportunities. So I typically employ somewhere between 4 and 6 students in the brewery, and we employ another 4 to 6 students upstairs in the brewing science laboratory doing the wet lab analysis. Typically, we'd like to cross-train those students so you get to work both in the brewery and upstairs in the laboratory. And because most of our work revolves around research, we really like it when we hire students that pay attention to detail. And frankly, if you don't pay attention to detail, you're not going to do well in school anyways. But we try to hire students that are freshmen or sophomore. That way we have a chance to train them, and they're around for a few years. It doesn't make sense to train someone for 1 year of work. It's quite a bit of training. When you're working with us, you don't necessarily have to have any previous experience working in a brewery or a food processing facility. We will train you. And we do have a set of standard operating procedures to follow, and that goes along with your training, and you can always refer to those. So if you have questions, you can always contact me, and Dan can give you my contact information. Thanks.